Welcome to Visera Link webinar number 5. In this webinar, we're going to talk about the report summary. So this is the first of the 4 videos where we're going to talk about the different reports. It's very important that you watch every single one of them so you'll have a good understanding of how to read the reports. And as always, we start with this very important message. Visera Link does not identify, diagnose, or treat any disease or medical condition. It's very important to remember this because when you run a scan on somebody, it's not diagnosing in the sense that it's not saying you have this disease or you have that disease or anything along those lines. It's also not looking for what's wrong with you. And if you watch the first webinar, you already know all of this, but just in case somebody skipped that one, I just want to make sure that's clear. What this scan does do is it deals with our everyday wellness journey. So again, in this specific webinar, we're going to focus on the summary report. So when you run a scan, this is the report that appears on your screen by default as soon as the scan completes. And I'm going to explain why the information on this report is extremely important, why we should never treat this report as if it's not as important as the others. And I'm also going to explain how to understand the information on this report so you can better help your clients, yourself, and your loved ones. So first, let's go ahead and look at the kind of information that the summary report presents to you. It'll show the number of in and out of range biomarkers, heart rate variability, breathing rate, skin age, and mental stress index. And you'll know you're in the summary report because up on the top, you'll see the tabs for the 4 different reports: summary, systems, products, and services. And you'll know you're in the summary report because you'll see a blue line underneath it. So let's go ahead and start talking about the different boxes. The way we're going to do this is we're going to start from the top and work our way down. I'll give you information you need to know. Now remember, you're using this on your compatible smartphone or compatible iPad, so it's a touch screen. So with all of these, if you ever touch any of these boxes, it'll open up a description or an explanation on that specific measurement in case you need a refresher on what that specific measurement is. And we're just going to start from the top, work our way down. So biomarkers goes first. So if you were to touch it with your finger, it'll bring this up, an explanation. So biomarkers are measurable indicators of biological processes or conditions. They offer a window into how the body is functioning, helping us detect imbalances, track progress, and make informed decisions about wellness strategies. Biomarkers are digital representations of actual components of the body, such as organs, glands, and systems. And biomarkers also include lifestyle and environmental factors that impact the body, such as sleep, emotions, and toxins. After incorporating your measurements from the facial scan, the Visera algorithm establishes your baseline score, which you might think of as your normal or resting score. Biomarkers are then compared with this baseline. Biomarkers with a higher score than your baseline are considered out of range. Biomarkers with a lower score than your baseline are considered in range. And the Visera Link scan will recommend products that support out-of-range biomarkers. An out-of-range biomarker is not saying that there's something wrong with you. An out-of-range biomarker is just saying, hey, here's a specific point where you can focus on in terms of daily habits and lifestyle changes that will best support whatever body system that biomarker falls under. And we'll talk about biomarkers in more detail when we get to the systems report where it actually shows the list of biomarkers. So there's not really much you can do with biomarkers in the summary report. It just gives you that number. So now let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is heart rate. And again, if you touch it with your finger, it'll bring up this little box right here, and it gives you a good general description of heart rate. So a heart rate is the number of times the heart beats per minute. Normal resting heart rate for adults ranges anywhere from 60 to 100 beats per minute. But this can vary based on age, fitness level, and lifestyle factors. For example, athletes tend to have lower resting heart rates, which suggests better heart function. So why is resting heart rate important? Well, first, it's an indicator of cardiovascular fitness. Second, stress and recovery monitor. Third, early detection of health issues. And fourth, longevity and wellness. So what do you do if somebody has a resting heart rate that's outside of the average? Pretty simple. You focus on things that they can do to improve their resting heart rate. So first, incorporate regular exercise. Second, practice stress management. Third, prioritize sleep. Fourth, stay hydrated. Fifth, follow a balanced diet. And sixth, monitor your progress. And this last one is very important because when you scan somebody, and I'll go over identifying patterns later on, the more and more you scan people, you'll be able to determine if something is a pattern, meaning their resting heart rate is outside of the average consistently, or maybe during that one scan, it was just an off week or an off day, which is okay. So that's why it's so important to do follow-up scans on people on a consistent basis, so that way you'll be able to identify patterns. And next on the report summary is heart rate variability. And again, if you touch it with your finger, it'll bring this up. Heart rate variability, what is it? The amount of time that passes between each heartbeat fluctuates slightly, and this is known as heart rate variability, HRV. HRV is often seen as a marker of your body's ability to adapt to changing conditions. A higher HRV typically indicates greater resilience and flexibility, while a lower HRV may signal stress, fatigue, or underlying health concerns. To be more specific, HRV is a measurement of how the autonomic nervous system is functioning. This system is made up of the sympathetic nervous system, which is involved in the body's fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which involves rest and digest responses. So why is HRV important? Well, first, stress and recovery monitoring. Second, insight into autonomic balance. Third, improved wellness decision making. And fourth, early detection of imbalances. Now, when it comes to heart rate variability, a good or average HRV typically tends to lower as you age. Because of that, it's hard to put a firm number on it, but when you look at different studies or charts online, you'll be able to get a good idea of a good or average HRV. And athletes and other people who are very fit may have a much higher heart rate variability. And the ways that you can improve your HRV would be things like practice deep breathing, incorporate regular exercise, prioritize sleep, manage stress, stay hydrated, and monitor your progress. And the next one is your breathing rate. And just like the previous ones, if you touch it with your finger, it'll bring up this explanation of breathing rate. So let's get right into it. And it says right here that breathing rate is basically the number of breaths taken per minute. A normal resting breathing rate for an adult is between 12 and 25 breaths per minute. Resting breathing rate decreases as a child ages and is comparable to an adult's at around age 13. So why is breathing rate important? Well, simple. It's an indicator of stress levels. It helps you measure cardiovascular fitness and early detection of imbalances. And just like heart rate variability, there's different charts and tables that you can find online with average breathing rates. And as you can imagine, it varies depending on age as well. So if you come across somebody that has a resting breathing rate that's outside of the average, it's pretty simple. First, factors that influence resting breathing rate are physical fitness, stress levels, environmental conditions, and health conditions. So you focus on how to improve your resting breathing rate. So you can set goals with them to practice deep breathing, incorporate mindfulness. This one is big, stay active. So physical fitness, exercise, and monitor progress. So there are things that we can do as individuals to improve our resting breathing rate. Because of this, it's also important that when you run a scan on somebody, make sure that you give them instructions. They need to be in a state of rest, meaning do not run a scan right after working out, because as you know, your breathing rate is going to be higher than normal. And then the next one is skin age. And again, if you touch it with your finger, it'll bring this up. Now, I'm going to clarify something about skin age, because a lot of people, when they look at skin age, that specific measurement, they immediately think about beauty. That's what they're thinking about. They forget that skin is an actual organ. So if you are 30 years old and you get a skin age that's 40, for example, you need to focus on factors that influence the skin as an organ. And those are hydration, sleep, diet, stress management, sun exposure, and genetics. And that one, there's not much we can do there. But the first 5 we can definitely do something about. So if somebody gets a skin age that's higher than their actual age, this is what it's talking about. This is what we focus on with that person. We let them know that it's talking about the skin as an organ and not about beauty. So make that perfectly clear. So then what you do is you kind of use this as a checklist and you go through and you identify areas where this person can improve. And then you set goals with that person on what they can do to improve. And now we're going to look at mental stress index, which is the last one on the bottom right. And just like the others, if you touch it with your finger, it's going to bring up an explanation of what it is. So it basically lets us know that a score of 1 or 2 indicates that stress levels are below normal. These lower levels of mental arousal are beneficial for long-term psychological and physical health. So 1 or 2, all right, great. A score of 3 indicates a moderate amount of stress that is not considered harmful to psychological and physical health. All right, we're still good. But a score of 4 or 5 indicates that stress levels are higher than normal. These higher levels of mental arousal can be detrimental to long-term psychological and physical health. And let's start with the obvious. Stress is part of life. Everyone's going to deal with it. But chronic stress can take a toll on both your mind and body. That's what we're talking about right here, chronic stress, and helping identify that. And of course, understanding how your body reacts to stress is key to managing it effectively. And that's why it's so important to monitor, measure, and understand your body's response to stress, which in turn provides insights into your overall wellness. When you experience stress, your body activates its fight or flight response. And what this does is it triggers a cascade of physiological changes designed to help you handle immediate threats. For example, increased heart rate. And what this does is it prepares your body for quick action. Rapid breathing. This helps deliver oxygen to your muscles. Also, release of stress hormones, of which cortisol and adrenaline fuel the response. Now, these changes are helpful in short bursts. But chronic activation of the stress response system can lead to issues such as fatigue, digestive problems, weakened immunity, difficulty concentrating, and increased risk of cardiovascular conditions. That's why taking care and managing our stress is very, very important, because then we're doing our best to make sure that any stress we're dealing with doesn't turn into chronic stress. So if somebody ever gets a 4 or a 5 in that part of the report, here's some goals you can set with this person. Practice deep breathing, incorporate mindfulness and meditation, stay physically active, prioritize rest and sleep, seek social support, and then track your progress. One thing that a lot of people are doing is they create a spreadsheet for the people that they're scanning. So for example, you can use Excel or another type of spreadsheet where you can have a tab for each specific client. Then when you scan somebody, you'll fill in the fields with whatever their numbers were for that scan. Here's an example. So this person got scanned February 1st, and you can see that the fields were filled in. Then March 1st, they got scanned again. They were filled in again. Then April 1st, they were scanned. Everything was filled in again. Anyway, the point of this is helping you identify patterns. And then what you do is you set goals with the person. In other words, when people come get scanned by you, it's a more well-rounded scan because it still does the biomarkers and you're still recommending your powerful products, the essential oils, the supplements, but now you're also getting this information. And this is why it's very important to take this report seriously and give it the attention it deserves and not just skip over it and move on to the other parts of the report. If you have any questions for us, feel free to contact us. If you're an existing Visera customer, here's our contact information for billing, tech support, and general support. There's the number, option 1, or support@visera.com. Or if you have training questions or sales questions, meaning you want to sign up or you want to refer somebody, call us at the same number. And then option 2, or sales@visera.com. And this is where you can find us on social media. If you're not following us yet, make sure to do so. And thanks for watching. Make sure to watch the next webinar. It will be on the systems report.